go and do postgraduate at the London School of Economics. And then when I came back in end of 61, I branched off to go and start the National Investment Bank. I did it for about 3 years, and then Nkrumah asked me, Dr. Nkrumah asked me if I would accept the post of governor of the bank. Well, naturally, this is something I could do, so I accepted. The times were difficult because the government was spending a lot of money. That was the time we were doing the Akusumbo, Tema Harbour, even the motorway, and several Geehawk factories. So the government was spending a lot of money. They felt that they were right in spending it. It was the bank's function to try and dampen the effects. So it was a difficult situation. And then came the coup in 1966. Of course, the soldiers who came to power then, they had the same interest as the bank to try and keep matters under control. So the spending was lessened then, and we were able to apply orthodox central banking methods and also pragmatic approaches to solve the problem that was there. We were helped a lot by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So by 1967, the problems were largely solved.
In 1967, Dr. J.H. Frimpong Ansah, the then Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, became the 5th and youngest governor at the age of 37. He continued with the reform and changes in monetary policy and financial management of the economy that followed the overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah on February 24, 1966, by the military. The military-led National Liberation Council, NLC government, which ruled Ghana from 1966 to 1969, and its successor, the democratically elected Progress Party government, headed by Dr. K. Busia, Prime Minister from 1969 to 1972, both favored an open monetary policy. This meant a pronounced shift from the central economic planning of the previous era to the liberalization of the economy and the financial sector, which had been crippled by administrative controls, import licensing, and speculative exchange practices of the First Republic. Dr. Frimpong Ansah's period at the helm of the Bank of Ghana saw the further installation of administrative, moral, and financial discipline into the staff of the bank. A man of principles, he enforced the code of ethics for bankers, especially in punctuality, moral behavior, work output and performance, and even a dress code. Staff were encouraged to enroll in professional banking courses offered by the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana and other institutions of learning. The administration of the bank was restructured and a new policy system put in place.
Dr. Frimpong Ansah was also very interested in improving the quality of the staff at the bank. And so he sent people out to both local and foreign countries to train. And I myself was a beneficiary of this. When I joined the bank, he sent me out to Stanford University to study for economics for a year to improve my understanding of economics and how the financial system worked. And several of the bank's staff benefited from these either long-term courses or short-term courses.
In January 1972, the second democratic experiment of the Republic of Ghana came to an end with the overthrow of the Progress Party government of Dr. Busia and the Second Republic by another military junta, the National Redemption Council, NRC, led by Colonel I.K. Achampong. The painstaking planning and reform of the economy, the vision and the hope of the 2-year development plan, and the work of the economic management team of the Bank of Ghana came to a halt. Things were further compounded when Colonel Achampong himself assumed the portfolio of Minister of Finance and tried to run the central bank as a department of the ministry. In 1973, Dr. Frimpong Ansah, on the expiry of his 5-year term of office, retired. Dr. Amon Nikwe, a banker of international repute and a one-time executive of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, was appointed the sixth governor of the Bank of Ghana. His first assignment was to streamline monetary interest rates and create policies of the bank to suit the programs of the NRC government. The most difficult part of Dr. Nikwe's assignment was how to resolve problems posed by the NRC policies and to restore sanity, discipline and confidence in monetary administration. His first 2 years in office saw an economy under siege, characterized by rapid monetary expansion, rampant inflation, shortages of essential commodities, and a precarious foreign exchange crisis. He also had the onerous task of convincing the IMF and the World Bank to get involved once again in Ghana's financial affairs, especially the management of external debt, taking into account the existing realities of the government's economic policies. This he was able to achieve within a period of time. Ironically, a very successful agricultural campaign and initiative of the NRC government, Operation Feed Yourself, which yielded bumper food harvests throughout the country, led to the Bank of Ghana's involvement under Dr. Nikwe in development financing. The bank established a grains warehousing company with support from the Canadian International Development Agency, CIDA, to ensure food security and to stem the tide of inflation. In order to promote affordable housing, the bank established 2 brick and tile factories in Accra and Tema to produce cheap building materials locally for low-cost housing and to save valuable foreign exchange. Another development financing venture by the bank were 2 pilot projects in cattle ranching at Afenya on the Accra Plains and Wulugu in the northern region of Ghana in 1977. This was the outcome of a research study by the bank's Development Finance Department on the potential and viability of livestock breeding and dairy production in Ghana. The third and fourth decade of the Bank of Ghana was the era of 3 governors who had to contend with the political turmoil of that period, namely Dr. Alex Ashagbo from 1977 to 1982, Mr. J.S. Addo from 1983 to 1987, and Dr. G.K. Agama from 1987 to 1997. This segment of Ghana's history saw the end of the second military government of the NRC/SMC 1 and 2, who were ousted in the June 4, 1979 uprising by young military officers and other ranks led by Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings and the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, AFRC, who ruled the nation until October 1979. The AFRC handed power to the People's National Party administration of Dr. Yila Liman when it won the national elections held that year under the Third Republican Constitution. In December 1981, however, Dr. Liman was removed from office by Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings in a coup d'etat with the support of the military. The Provisional National Defense Council, PNDC, was formed under Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, which ruled Ghana until January 1993. After elections under the Fourth Constitution, he became President of Ghana and leader of the National Democratic Congress government. The instability of the political process in Ghana over the third and fourth decades of the bank significantly transformed the role of the bank and its operations.
During my tenure, there were, I think, 4 changes of government, and most of them were military. The economy was in a very difficult situation. Inflation was very high, very rampant, and there were controls, import controls, exchange controls, price controls. So in terms of macroeconomy, it was not the ideal, and it was a very difficult, very restrictive regime that I met when I succeeded Dr. Amon Nikwe the late as governor. The level of appreciation of macroeconomic stability was practically nil. Everybody believed that price controls were the thing, would solve all the problems. Price controls, exchange controls, you name it. Now, my approach then was to fight against this conception.
I assumed the position of governor at the Bank of Ghana in March 1983. And at the time, the staff, or some of the staff who constituted what was known as the Interim Management Committee, were responsible for the administration of the bank. But I was able to persuade the government of the day to agree to change the structure and reintroduce the board of directors, and also re-establish the managerial positions in the various sections of the bank, as well as in the other state-owned banks in the country. I found this aspect quite challenging from the beginning, but I must say that with the cooperation of the government and of the staff, we were able to achieve stability in the administration peacefully.
I assumed office at the Bank of Ghana first as chairman of the board of directors in February 1986, and subsequently acted as governor from January 1987 to July 1988, when I was appointed as the substantive governor. During the period 1986 to 1990-91, the country had little foreign exchange. In fact, at the time we were in arrears, which we had to pay back before we began to accumulate foreign reserves. So really, it was not until 1992 that we began to accumulate foreign reserves for the country. Now, one of the highlights of the period, which I would like to mention, is that in December 1992, there were preparations for the transition to constitutional government. And the economic team had worked to prepare the budget for 1993. But suddenly, as a policy shock, the government had to increase wages for the civil service by about 80%. At that time, the bank had lifted all the reserve ratios requirements of the commercial banks. And we were hoping that we will enter the constitutional period with a discretionary management of monetary policy. But unfortunately, that wage increase forced us subsequently to cancel those policy measures, and we restored them in order to control the economy until we could lift them again. And that was a major event which occurred in December 1992 and went through to 1994, when we were beginning to have a hold on inflation.
In 1997, at the beginning of the fifth decade of the bank's existence, and after the often turbulent and heady earlier period, Dr. Kwabena Duffuor, a then deputy governor, was appointed the 10th governor of the Bank of Ghana. His was a time of relative political and economic stability. Thus, he was able to institute further and far-reaching administrative, operational and structural reforms with great effect.
I was a commercial banker. Between 91 and 95, I was the general manager of Ghana Commercial Bank branch in London and the head of the place. 95 July, I was given the post of deputy governor, and I came back home to assume that responsibility. Mid-July 97, I was given the job of the governor of Central Bank. And under my governorship, the Central Bank experienced a lot of extensive administrative, operational, and structural reforms during the 4-year period that I was there as the Central Bank governor. My commitment to human resource development perhaps was a unique feature of my administration as the governor of Central Bank, to the extent that even when I was retiring in September 2001, 5 members of staff were selected for postgraduate training in economics, finance and accounting in overseas universities, especially in UK. In addition to about 5 or so, 4 members were also picked for postgraduate training in economics to the PhD level in Warwick, Nottingham, and Southampton universities, all in the UK. And I would like to add that at the time I was pursuing such aggressive training program, I also recruited professional bankers with considerable experience in banking to strengthen departments in the bank, such as banking supervision and banking department. Now, when I took over as central bank governor, the economy was going through a lot of challenges. And in order to maintain the cedi, it's our currency, to maintain the value of the cedi, and to get the macroeconomic situation under control, certain measures were taken immediately. First, and I think Ghanaians remember, that we had to remove all the government accounts in the commercial banks into the account at the central bank. Why did I do that? These banks had invested government funds in treasury bills, which meant that the banks had borrowed government's own money to government. I took all these funds into a central bank.
In the year 2000, the government of the National Democratic Congress, NDC, was defeated at the presidential and parliamentary polls, and in January 2001, handed over power to the New Patriotic Party, which had won. Mr. J.A. Kufuor, its flag bearer and leader, was inaugurated the 5th President of the Republic of Ghana in January 2001.
I, John Agyekum Kufuor,
having been elected
to
the high office of President of the Republic of Ghana, do in the name of the Almighty God swear. That I will be faithful. And
this was the first time in the nation's history that there had been a peaceful civilian change of government. Dr. Dufour remained as governor until he retired in September 2001. Dr. Paul Akwa, a senior executive of the World Bank, was named the 11th governor. Today, 50 years after its establishment, the Bank of Ghana remains the foremost strategic and operational financial institution in the nation. It still maintains its status as the central bank and operates accordingly. Furthermore, in recent times, the promulgation of Act 612 by the Parliament of Ghana in 2002, along with previous legislations, granted the central bank greater independence in the conduct of the nation's monetary policy.
The Bank of Ghana was established by the Bank of Ghana Ordinance number 34 of 1957. Under the ordinance, a 7-member board was created, chaired by the governor and assisted by 5 other board members and a deputy governor. Subsequent enactments expanded the board membership owing to the bank's growth, especially in the regions and its operations. As a result, subsequent enactments made it possible for a 12-member board to be appointed. The governor is the chairman of the board, and he is assisted by 2 deputy governors and 9 external board members, one of whom is from the Ministry of Finance. The board is responsible for policy issues, and management and staff execute these policies as they are determined.
When it comes to government, our relationship is very special. Special in the sense that we do more than ordinary banking relationship with our clientele. We, on our part, would have to, on daily basis, consolidate government overall position in terms of the revenue generated by all the revenue agencies, namely SEBS, IRS, VAT service, and other non-tax revenue that flows into the consolidated fund. Out of this, all the expenditures that government have made arising from the revenues that came into the common pool are all also consolidated, and we determine government position on daily basis to enable us ensure that government is not overspending its revenues.